Hey everybody, Garden Sound and Lilo the Bird, coming at you with another video. Today's video is unique. It's the most in-depth review of something I've ever done. I tried to be really exhaustive with my research, and I tried to be really thorough with my findings and my research methods. So for those of you who are not into hardware reviews, I would recommend that you watch anyway, because I think this is going to be fun enough for you all to enjoy. And for those of you who are into hardware and into hardware reviews, today's your lucky day. Garden Sound's doing a hardware review. And ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to be reviewing this. This is the Behringer Model D. And before I go any further with today's video, I need to send a huge shout out and thank you to George Sedaris, who goes by George Antonios online, cool music, as well as Mr. Bill. So what is this? This is the Behringer Model D, as I've said before, and it came out, or it was announced in 2017. The initial date was supposed to be in November or December. I ended up pre-ordering mine and was informed that the demand was so high that production was way backlogged. So I actually didn't get a hold of this model until April. Just a full disclaimer, full disclosure for people who are cynical. Behringer is not paying me for this, neither is Sweetwater. So let's start off with why do I like it, because obviously I like this synthesizer. I'm going to try to remain as neutral as possible throughout this review, but I gotta go ahead and let you know I like it a bit. The main reason I like it, and the main reason that I want you all to know about the synthesizer, is that it's affordable, which is something that Behringer is known for. Just a brief overview, it's $300. It has everything that the Moog Model D has, and then some. We'll get into that. It's very competitive at this price, too. There are other synthesizers around it, like the Minotaur, or the Make Noise O-Coast, or the Make Noise DPO, which is really just a modular piece of gear that's only a generator. We'll get into that. The Moog Mother 32. There are other synthesizers in this price range that are competing with this. And in my opinion, this thing outdoes those in some ways, and it lacks in other ways, and we'll get into that in a minute. So in this review, I invite you to join me on a deep dive into why this synthesizer, I believe, is the best value synthesizer that you can get for the money. We'll go over all of its neat quirks and features, as well as how it sounds, a song that I wrote with it, some methods I used to test it and compare it to other synthesizers in the same price range, and that'll be it. So I changed wardrobes like 3 or 4 times in this video because it took me so long to record this properly. So I have a huge shout out and thank you to give to my mother, who sent me 1 or 2 of the hoodies that I'm wearing in this episode. So thanks, Mom. Okay, so first things first, let's talk specifications. Now, I'm not very good at memorizing a whole bunch of specifications. I don't know how some other better hardware reviewers are, like Sonic State. Like, this guy is just an encyclopedia of specifications. I'm not. So, although I understand what's in the synthesizer, I'm going to be reading this off of the spec sheet. Okay, so it is a monophonic synthesizer, meaning it only has one voice. It is 100% analog, i.e. the signal path from end to end doesn't have any ICs in the way. In fact, I opened it up if you want to take a look at it. Alright, there's the board. So if you disconnect it from the board, I mean, this is actually a Eurorack. It's a Eurorack box, even. That's pretty neat, right? Yeah, looking at this thing, like I said, I'm looking inside here. No ICs. Everything is analog. Got capacitors galore. Capacitors, relays, switches. Little synthesizer porn right here. Yeah, look at that beautiful stuff. That's neat, right? Look at that. Yeah. Oh. Anyway, there you go. So that's how you connect and disconnect it. I'm going to go ahead and connect it back up. We have 3 oscillators that go from 0.1 hertz to 20 kilohertz in 6 overlapping ranges. 1 LFO, which it goes from 0.05 hertz to 200 hertz and up to 300 hertz with external CV input. We have 1 switchable variable control filter, either low pass or high pass. And we have 2 envelopes, an amplifier envelope and a filter envelope. And both of those can be voltage controlled. So we have CV inputs for a lot of different things on the synthesizer. Again, take a look at the manual if you'd like a full range of them. But basically, you can get this thing to do what you need it to do out of the box without worrying about having any MIDI converters and things like that. It does have MIDI through and MIDI in. We have both 5-pin DIN and USB box connector, which is, I believe, Type B. Thank you, Lila. We have a high and a low output and a 3.5 millimeter output. So you've got a 1/4 inch out, 2 of those, 1 high, 1 low. You also have an 1/8 inch I guess you'd call it a, the Euro rack plug. These guys right here. We also got those. All right, in terms of our controller selection, like what do the knobs do? The main oscillator knob, the big knobs on this guy, they can tune it -2 or +2 steps. We have glide that goes from 0 to 10. We have modulation mix. Oscillator 3 is your modulator source, or the noise, the noise generator / LFO. Again, the mod depth just goes from 0 to 10. I guess that's a percentage type of factor. It's not necessarily anything discrete there. In terms of our oscillator bank, we have a range selector. It's a switch. Nice clicky knobs. Gotta love that. Which these go from low, 32 feet, 16 feet, 8 feet, 4 foot, and 2 foot stops. Different waveforms. We have 6 different waveforms: triangle, triangle, saw, square, wide pulse, and narrow pulse. And this is the same for all 3 oscillators. Did I mention there's 3 oscillators? Each of these oscillators has its own volume knob, and this is contained inside of the mixer section that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 switches. Not only are these knobs 0 kill, but they also have a switch to deactivate that signal path if you're not using it. So let's say there's a bit of static coming in on one of them for whatever reason. You can actually switch off that signal. So right now I actually only have 1 oscillator turned on. The external in, which it does have via 1/8 inch plug, also has a separate volume knob with a switch, which is really nice. There's also a noise generator built into this that can do either white or pink noise, depending on what spectrum you'd like. That has its own knob and switch as well. And then, of course, from there are switches that control what the filters do. There is a standard Moog ladder filter. I'm saying Moog ladder filter because we all know it's based on the Moog, the famous Moog ladder filter. But it itself is not labeled that, right? But they do brag that it does have a classic analog tone, which I think is them trying to give a nod saying, hey, we copied Moog. An analog voltage controlled filter envelope, as well as a loudness, they call it, or just basically amp envelope. And all of this runs out through a headphones jack at the very right hand side of the unit. There's a volume knob for your headphones jack. If you want that, you can independently control the output. Also, there's a really neato tuning knob, and you can turn that on and it'll play an A440. Isn't that neat? Those are all the specs. If you want to see the entire spec sheet list, it's baked into the manual. Go ahead and download that. I'll put a link to that in the description down below. Pretty much everything I'm talking about today, I'm going to link to some sort of a reference in the description down below, because like I said, I'm new to hardware reviews. I want to give you all as much information as possible, but it's the time factor that we have to take into account here. Let's talk about this next piece of information that everybody's wondering. Is it a clone? Obviously, yes. It is called the Behringer Model D. There's a very famous synthesizer. In fact, here's a side-by-side comparison of the units themselves. You can see that absolutely this was based on the Moog Model D. It looks almost identical to it. Some people that I know don't like the blue and red and white switches on this model. I think they're kind of cool and minimal. That's just my opinion. Develop your own opinion. Let me know in the comments section down below what you think of the switch colors. There are also things that this synthesizer does that the Moog Model D does not do. For instance, it's got a MIDI in. The original Model D did not have MIDI. Now, I understand the reissue of the Model D does have MIDI, but it's modern times. So this does have MIDI capabilities, not exactly as many as I would like. More on that later. It does have MIDI in, MIDI through, and a box connector, so you can use it as even a MIDI host. But let's talk about pros and cons. Pros: Eurorack form factor, has MIDI host built into it. It's affordable. It's got nice feeling knobs. All the knobs feel solid and nice and firm, and it doesn't feel cheap. It looks nice. It sounds good, which we'll get into in a minute. It's also easy to learn and use, and that's one thing I think that a lot of people gloss over here. It can serve as a generator. So there is a plug out at the mixer section allowing you to just take the oscillator out, bypassing the filter, bypassing the envelopes. Let's talk about cons. So this thing, unfortunately, for some reason, uses what's called a sysx command in order to talk to different things in the unit. So for instance, there are only several things out of the box that are actually MIDI controllable, although it does have a MIDI, a USB type B connector. And that throws me off, because if they're going through the trouble of adding a USB connector to it, why not add control wires for different things in the synthesizer? For instance, you can pretty much only send note on, note off and just basic commands like that. I can't control any of the filters with CC. I can't control any of the oscillator or the glide or anything like that. Basically, just the mod curve is the only thing that I can control with MIDI CC, which is a huge drawback because other synthesizers in this price range, like the Moog Mother 32, the O Coast, and the Minotaur, you can send MIDI data back and forth between them. Now, that got me thinking maybe this was an authenticity move. Maybe since the original Moog Model D couldn't do that, they didn't want this model to do that. But here's the thing, the new Moog Model D can. And so it's like, it's either an authenticity move or a laziness move, and I kind of lean toward the laziness side here, Behringer. It wouldn't have been difficult to program that functionality into the synthesizer, and if it would have increased the price by $50, it would be worth it. So there's that. That's my one humongous complaint about this unit, is that there really isn't a good way to program all of the different cutoffs. Now, you can use CV and you can use plug out, which thankfully they do provide a couple of cables in the box for you to do that. So I mean, I could, plug out from mod source into different cutoffs and that sort of thing, but it's not the same as being able to just control it from the DAW. Another con that I have, another major complaint, is that it takes so long to warm up. This thing takes at least 15 minutes, if not more, to warm up from a cold state before any of the oscillators' pitch is reliable. Now, this is a weird thing about analog synths that I didn't know about a lot, about like hardware and gear like this. When you plug it in, it actually takes a little bit of time for it to heat up to its normal temperature. And while it's doing that, the oscillators themselves are not reliable in terms of pitch. Sometimes like a whole half step of difference over the course of 15 minutes from plugging it in. So that might be a quality thing, but here's the thing, after 15 minutes, after 20 minutes, it's stable. So if you're taking this on the road, you're taking it to a gig, this is an important thing to know. You're gonna need to turn this thing on and wait a second before starting to play live. So now let's talk a little bit about how I tested this and how I came to some of these conclusions. Over the past week or so, I've been going back and forth, gathering data on what the filter sweeps sound like, what the amp envelopes sound like for very specific noises, and what the actual oscillators themselves sound like and how they stack up and compare to other synthesizers in this price range. We have a head-to-head comparison with both the Moog Minotaur and the Moog Mother 32. Jesus, Gardner. It stacks up on basically every single thing except for the triangle wave, which on this unit isn't that great. So that's one of the major drawbacks of the synthesizer, is that the triangle wave sounds pretty weak. But the saw wave, the square wave, and a couple of the other settings on here, like the loudness contour, for instance, Bill actually admits that this sounds a bit punchier than his Mother 32. So again, my case for the best bang for your buck is this thing right here. It's got more than everything else in its price range. It's cheaper, and the things that it lacks are things that you don't necessarily need, especially if you're a beginner in the analog synthesizer world. So again, that side-by-side comparison is below. Feel free to check that out if you want to see whether or not my claims are valid. I promise you they are. I wouldn't just lie on camera. It's not my thing. All in all, everybody that I've shown this to either has purchased one or is going to purchase one. I love it. I think it's great. I'm trying to keep this review condensed down to 10 minutes. So I'm kind of glossing over some of the specifics, but feel free to check it out below. But your question probably now is, how does it sound? So here are some glamour shots and a song that I wrote. So, final thoughts. Who is this synthesizer for? This synthesizer is for the serious beginner. Somebody who is serious about getting into analog synthesis, but is definitely a beginner. And that comes down to the fact that it's got entry-level pricing. The hardware is solid. It's from a pretty reputable company, although Behringer did have bad production runs in the early 2000s, but they've since buried that. It is no longer something that we have to worry about with Behringer gear. They are starting to expand their line of synthesizers into the modular realm. If you didn't know, Behringer has announced that they're going to start making modules. They've got another synthesizer coming out called the Neutron that's going to be right in the same price range. I'm definitely picking up one of those. It is a faithful copy of the Moog Model D, and if you're into synths, I mean, pick one up. It's only $300. But anyway, that's going to do it for me. If you liked this, click the thumbs up button and hit that subscribe button. Maybe more of these will be coming. But as always, my name is Gardner. This is Lyle the Bird. And we'll see you next time. Won't we? Do you want to kiss me? Is that what you want? No, you want to bite me. Oh, why you want to bite? Why are you biting?